What you're about to listen to is a Bry-Fy production. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Bry-Fy podcast. I'm your host, Bry-Fy, your comics guy. This week, another fun interview. I feel like we got a lot, just one after the other, and it's been a blast. This week, though, we have a creator with us, Jeff Haas, who is doing a book called Reigning Devil, which looks brutal, looks awesome, and I wanted to get him on to talk about it. So, Jeff, thanks for coming on to talk about your book and what's going on with that, man. So how are you?
I'm doing very well. How about yourself, sir?
Doing pretty good. It's the weekend. I love it. So you get to relax, working the 9 to 5. You need it.
Oh, yeah, definitely do agree with you. It's nice to be back in the schedule, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And how about, like, for you, with you working, are you one of the people who has to stay at home, or, like, how's that all?
I am. Well, I'm on summer vacation now. I'm a high school teacher, so I've been remote teaching for a while, but we just hit summer vacation.
Oh, nice, dude. So this has always been my question for teachers. Like, what do you do during the summer? Like, when you don't have quote unquote work?
Well, a couple of things. Ideally, because I'm still being paid, you're supposed to be lesson planning for, we teach in the summer at my school. It's a special needs school. So we do teach in the summer. So I do prepare a lesson plan for the summer, but ideally you're lesson planning, you're preparing for the next school year. Me personally, gives me some free time to do some writing, to work on a podcast that I'm a part of as well, and some other things. So I find ways to keep busy. That's
awesome, dude. I've just always wondered. I was like, to me, being a teacher always seemed like the dream job, because you got like 2 months off, kind of, where you could just do fun things. And then people tell you, oh, teachers get paid crap money, and you hear all this other stuff, and you're just like, oh, wow, maybe it's not all cupcakes and roses.
Oh no, you need those days off. Trust me. You get pretty badly drained during the school year. But like I said, I teach at a special needs school too, so it's a little more draining than some other schools. But I will guarantee that every teacher that exists, as long as they're halfway decent, needs their days off, because it's been a long school year.
Oh, I bet. And man, with everything, especially with COVID and trying to find new ways to still teach and be present in these kids' lives without physically being in their lives, like, I can only imagine the challenges you face this year.
Yeah, it's been probably the most rough year that I've had. I've been teaching for maybe 7 years, and this has definitely been the worst.
Yeah,
mostly because of the remote teaching aspect, which none of us are really trained to do well.
Right. And you mentioned being a special needs teacher. I actually have a son who is on the spectrum, and they try to do Zoom calls with a teacher and with a class, and my God, he hates it. He absolutely hates, like, FaceTime, Skype, any kind of that stuff. So trying to put him in front of Zoom to do, like, things he already has issues, like, being told what to do.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, it's been a nightmare.
Yeah. It's the same issue. I mean, it makes your son feel any better. The teachers hate it too. I mean, honestly, any teacher worth any salt whatsoever recognizes that teaching is part, obviously, education, part informative, but it's also performance art. And performance art is really difficult via Zoom. It just is. You're competing against the kids' television, their dogs, their beds, taking a nap while they're on the call with you, a bunch of stuff, and you're trying to get them interested. And you realize they're probably playing video games while petting their pup, eating a snack while listening to you.
I mean, that's fair. I would do the same. Like, if I was back in high school and having to do this, I would probably be the worst student imaginable.
Oh, I totally agree. I was a pretty bad student as well. So yeah, I totally get it.
Well, man, that's pretty cool stuff, getting to catch up on that and kind of, getting to see a teacher's perspective. With my podcast, we've talked about COVID a lot. I mean, it affects everybody, but getting to see that side, because as a parent, I've only dealt with my side of the story. And so it's nice to hear that, what the teachers are going through. And I mean, not that it's nice, but it's eye-opening, I guess.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Like I said, any kid who wants to complain that they hate remote teaching, I will just promise you the teachers hate it just as much, if not more. I mean, it's so crushing for teachers as well.
That's crazy, man. Well, speaking of soul crushing and things of that nature, I think that's a pretty cool segue to talk about your book.
Oh, yes, indeed.
Reigning Devil, which, so you got to break this down a little bit for me, because I just read the issue that you sent over to me and loved it, but it looks like that this is part of a bigger story, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, there was originally this story was a 8-page backup story to a comic book called Gunmetal Black Ops, the first issue of that series, and it was an 8-issue backup story called God's Sword, where we introduce Malek. He's fighting, basically going to go kill the devil, Lucifer. It was never meant to go beyond that. The issue went well. It was received well. I enjoyed writing it, so then we decided to move on to a 6-issue miniseries called Malek Reigning Devil.
It's pretty sweet stuff, man. I love the brutality of it. Just getting into this story with Malek, man, I really want to read what led up previously, because to me it feels like what happens when Dante completes his Inferno, and like now he's the one running hell, you know. Which, this is crazy, because you never think about that. Like, what happens to hell after someone like defeats it, or, you know, is now the new ruler of it.
Indeed.
And I like how this story plays into that, because it's not just like Malek, hey, I did my job, now let me go back and hang out. It's like, oh no, now you're the one in charge. Now it's your problem. Yeah,
I mean, there's I highly recommend everyone reading the backup story God's Sword and Gunmetal Black Ops from 123 Go Publishing, where you basically get a real look into Malek's psychology, and it does make the other issues make far more sense, because basically what you have with Malek is someone who thought he was doing his job, and then as he was doing it, realized he was seriously being screwed over, as most of us do probably when we're working. But at the end of the day, he has realized towards the end of the 8-issue miniseries, the 8-page backup story, that he's been duped this entire time, that he's been merely a puppet, where he thought he may have been a loyal believer and follower of God, a zealot of God. He realized that he is nothing more than a puppet or a plaything of God, and the issues take place on what happens once he makes that decision and realizes that's what he is. Part of it is from a discussion with Lucifer, which is a very interesting conversation that they have with each other, where Lucifer kind of reveals, or not doesn't reveal, because now he's beginning to figure it out, but kind of tells him about what happens to him if he takes over hell, and warns him that his goal will then have to be conquest of hell. And it's interesting how that all plays out, and then obviously it goes into the first issue.
Yeah, totally, man. And like it doesn't slow down from there, you know, like picking up this story and getting into it. I mean, it kicks you and goes, which was nice, you know. It does a good deal of world building without slowing you down. It's not like Lord of the Rings world building here.
Indeed.
Where it's chapters and chapters, like, hey, let me tell you about this dude, and then his family, and then how they're his like. It's like, hey man, here you got your circles of hell. This is the person who's ruling it, and now what's Malekith gonna? Or shit, yeah, Malek gonna. I don't know why I said Malekith. Malek is gonna do, like, how is he gonna handle this situation? Because, I mean, he's trying. I mean, like any king, he's getting followers. You know, he's trying to make sure, like, hey, I'm the business now.
Yeah,
like. Oh, go ahead, man.
Exactly. I mean, the way I kind of view the story is sort of like a snowball going down a mountain, where it starts picking up speed and gets larger and larger, and what Malek is going to face becomes bigger and bigger and stronger, tougher and tougher, at least up to a certain point, where, like I said, the first is going basically it's a 6-issue structure. The first 2 are going to be in hell, and after the second issue, we're going to move on to purgatory and so forth. And I do kind of use Dante's Divine Comedy as sort of a little bit of a map. I don't adhere to it completely, obviously, but there's certain aspects of the journey that I do keep in mind. And as Malek continues and grows, and also probably one of the first times in his life, starts really thinking about himself and what he thinks philosophically about the nature of what a god is and what a god should be and what it is to be, in some level, a creator and also a protector of this massive area. He's going to develop as well as a character, but at least for the first 2 issues of Hell, it is him first exacting the vengeance, releasing the anger that he's feeling inside first.
It's pretty badass. Anger. I mean, come on.
Well, yeah. I mean, in many ways, if there was I don't have wrath in the first issue or at all, but if I do have gluttony, I do have lust. If wrath was in the story, in many ways, it would be him. I mean, he is in very real way in the embodiment of wrath in these first few issues.
Yeah, definitely. You can definitely sense. I mean, because he feels betrayed, and you definitely get a sense of that in this first issue of the loss that he feels from thinking he was just doing God's work, But it's funny because, like, I was reading this, it felt like, oh, he didn't read the terms of an agreement stuff. Like, he didn't check out the fine print because basically he was effed from the start. Like, he was doomed from the start on this mission. And I don't know, man, it's pretty crazy. And so, like, you mentioned multiple arcs. So, like, what is your idea for how long this book's going to be, or like how many issues?
It's 6 issues. Basically, without giving too much away, 2 in Hell, 1 in Purgatory, 2 in Heaven, and one epilogue.
Nice, man. And that's pretty cool though, because it looks like you're going to get some pretty big resolutions in here, especially if he does make his way up to heaven. So I mean, that's pretty intense.
Yeah, like I said, there's going to be not only the story, the world is going to expand quite a bit. It expands a lot in the 3rd and 4th issue, but it's going to he's going to also expand more as a character as well, as you get a little bit more of an idea of what he's done before God's Sword as a character and what his realizations are of what he's been this entire time. And the story on some, even with tons of action, has a very deep level of also philosophy in there, or let's say maybe theology in there, where the character is going to try to come to grips with what do you do when you lose your faith, and kind of where he is as well.
Yeah, totally, man. That's some pretty cool stuff. It's pretty deep. And, like reading through this first issue that you showed me, yeah, you definitely see it's more than just, a video game like button smash adventure. Like, there's definitely more to it, and it gets me excited to see what else is going to come next for that. As far as how this stuff is playing out for you, like the books, is issue 1 already out, or were you building the Kickstarter for this one?
Issue 1 is already available through IndyPlanet. You can get it on digital. It's 99 cents. To order it per issue, it's a little more expensive because you also got to pay for shipping. But IndyPlanet does allow it.
Catching my thoughts, man. We're flying through this today.
Oh, no worries.
No, you're one of my good guests, man. You're on it, and I dig that.
Always appreciate that.
Yeah.
I've talked to a lot of people. I also do a podcast as well called Spoiler Country. I'm the public relations manager. I'm on a lot of interviews. I do know some of them drag completely, so I'm trying to hopefully bypass the dragon and move right through it.
No, man, you're doing great. Like, so, I mean, you do another podcast. Like, what's the podcast that you do?
I'm the public relations manager for the Spoiler Country podcast. It's an entertainment podcast. The 2 owners of the podcast is Kenrick Regan and John Horsley. They're the primary interviewers, but I sometimes jump on if it's a guest I really want to talk to. And I've been on with them since the end of October, and so far we're averaging about maybe 20 shows a month now.
Dang, man.
Yeah, I keep them busy. I always have a guest. Almost every weekday I have a guest lined up for them. And if it's on the weekend, sometimes I'll take the guest.
Holy crap. So for them, this is a full-time job for them, right? Like, I mean, they're busting this out.
Well, I mean, they do have their own date, part time, full time jobs during the day. But yeah, I make sure that their nights are unfortunately quite busy.
Dang, that's crazy, man. But that's pretty sweet, though. I need to get me one of those PR man. Just someone, because man, doing it all by yourself, man, it's a lot of work. So I could use some help.
It is. I send out. I'm probably sending out 10 to 15 emails a day, confirming things, setting up scheduling, requesting interviews with people. Emailing people to find out who I can talk to. It's busy for me as well. But it's worth it. We're growing quite rapidly, and that feels pretty good.
Yeah, man. Well, shit, dude, you sound so freaking busy. How do you even find time to get this story out? Was it something that you've been working on for years, or
basically the first issue, I think I wrote it in a month. The second issue, it took me a little bit longer because I wasn't in quite a rush because the first issue had been completed. The third issue was a little bit longer. I'm going to be starting the fourth issue probably Tuesday or Wednesday.
Dang, man. You're on it, dude. Like just listening to you talk, dude, you are so on it. Like, I need more guests like you. You know what? You just run my show if you want. That's fine with me. But
no, I mean, like you said, it's all a matter of I would say willpower, because I'm a Green Lantern fan, so I'm going to go with willpower.
There you
go. The interest in doing it, and an understanding wife who's going to tolerate it. That's the three things you need.
Oh yeah, no, and I am thankful to have a wife who loves and puts up with my stuff. Actually, no, she supports. I'll be honest, a lot of the good equipment that I ever get is because she went out and bought it for me. Because I'm one of those guys who's just content with having what I need. I don't need a fancy mic. I just need something to record. But my wife's like, no, you're going to sound great. You're going to all this. So she's the one, I guess she's like my producer if I had one. And it's funny because I do, when we go to conventions and stuff, I always list her as the show producer. So that way she gets a badge as well. And
that's cool.
But she does. I mean, now that I think about it, hey, she's a big part of why I'm where I'm at. And so that's my shout out. Hopefully she's at the door listening to me talk right now.
Yeah. When I commented to my wife, I did look over to see if she heard me or not. You got to take points where you can get them.
Right. You're like, honey. Oh, man. So that's pretty sweet. So, I mean, with this stuff, I mean, you're getting into some big theology type stuff. Is it, and if this is too serious, you don't have to answer.
I always
this.
prefer seriousness.
Okay, sweet. I mean, is this reflect a lot on your own ideas with theology, religion, or is this just a fun story? You're like, hey, man, let's do Dante's Inferno, but cooler, or no, just something crazy.
Well, I would say Malek is kind of a representation of, not, I would say, necessarily my belief system, which is it's semi-atheist, it's more agnostic. So any discussion of God and hell and stuff like that is not quite where I would land. But however, I do spend a lot of time thinking about the repercussions of if there is a God, and if the God is, let's say, how he is in, Yahweh from Old Testament, or the more of the, Jesus Christ, Christian God, or Allah, things of that nature. And I do spend some time, and maybe I think a lot of people who actually are closer to agnostic do find themselves debating it, wondering about it, thinking about it. And I think about it as well. And like I said, I think to myself, if these representations of God or a God is accurate, what would that mean? What would that be? And Malek is my tool to explore, in some ways, the Judeo-Christian version of it, and then looking into if that is what God is, or is how God is represented, is accurate. What would that mean for the angels? What would that mean for us? How would that play out from a character's, psychologically as well, living under a God like that? And then I kind of play it forward.
Yeah, totally, man. And it plays really good in this comic. I really enjoy it. And for me, it does bring up that question, how does God manage heaven? How does all that work? I mean, of course, me, I grew up in a church and stuff like that. So you're always told one way, but when you're an adult and you think about things from a different perspective, you're you see stuff like Diablo, you see like stories like Lore Olympus that deal with like gods and things like that. Like, do they like, I don't know. It's just a fun thing to think about. And I got that fun kick reading this story. Like,
Yeah.
well, like, how would he handle this?
Yeah. I mean, if you were to view God as presented, especially let's say in the Old Testament, the Torah with Yahweh as God,
Mm-hmm.
that God in the Old Testament or Torah, depending on your belief system, is an ass. It's quite an ass. He's cruel. He's unforgiving in many ways. He is big into testing his characters and seeing whether or not they will remain faithful to him no matter what he does as a test. And he's he is in some levels a very maybe apathetic. I want to say oblivious, but he definitely is vindictive and cruel in many ways. And yet he's also demanding of your complete and utter fealty to him. You got to believe in him 100%. You got to have faith in him. You got to love him or it, depending on your belief system, 100%. And yet you can ask yourself on some level, other than creation, what has that entity done for those below it beyond that? And I take a look at a character like Malek, who was an angel, a very special angel. He was the sort of like the assassin angel. They call him, he's the destroying angel, was what Malek Hamashit means, destroying angel. And he has been very much taken advantage of, abused, and treated very callously by his God. So you look at that from the point of view of, yes, he's the creator. Maybe you can also do symbolically like parent. But now what do I owe this thing? It treated me like gave me creation, gave me life, but then it has behaved towards me in this manner. What do I owe it in return? And Malek is also facing that question of, what do I owe it? Also, if God is this great entity and this is how he acts, can I do better? Can I be a better guy? Can I look at it from a point of view of not demanding fealty from others? And once again, that's another thing that he's going to be struggling with as the series progresses more and more.
Totally, man. And it's badass. Like, and I love talking with this, getting your insight, because it only shows me where this story can go, which gets me excited because, you get a lot of just good versus evil type stuff, but I kind of like the twist on this. I like that it's not so cut and dry. I like that there's definitely more to this than just a beat 'em up in hell.
Yeah, I actually I've had a couple of reviews. One review did refer to it as a 90s almost Image comic where the character is just like plowing forward, and I think that reviewer kind of missed the point where there are beyond the fighting and the different action sets, there is a philosophy being played out. There is a lot of reflection by the main character being played out, and the action set pieces is kind of just the construct to go into the thought process of the main character. At least how I always viewed it. Though I do see, there's obviously a lot of action, which is obviously entertaining, but I do think there's also a necessary level of reflection by the main character that does kind of make it more than just the shoot 'em up kind of story.
Yeah, totally. And like when I just look at it, like if without reading, just scrolling through, looking at it, I mean, it definitely does appeal to that 90s comics like look, and that just the muscles, the sword, some of the dark blacks that are used to contrast some of these colors. It definitely has something there for dudes and people who love 90s comics, like Spawn, like what is it, Gen X was another one I think that I was a big fan of. And so I think, go ahead, man.
Well, I was gonna say, if we were talking about earlier about things that have inspired me as a writer, depending on who you are, maybe for better or worse, depending on your point of view, I will say, I don't know if you ever read the Extreme comic books, Extreme Sacrifice, Extreme Prejudice from the old Image days.
Yeah.
There was a story called Extreme Sacrifice, which had a character called Lord Chapel and also a bad guy called Crypt. And I will say, there's a certain inspiration from that comic book as well. And yeah, the visuals are similar in the sense of the large muscle character, as you were saying. But yeah, that's not an accident. But I also just want to make sure I shout out, because we mentioned the colors. Chris McAuley, who did I think I'm pronouncing it correctly, apologize if I didn't, if he's listening. He did a fantastic job with the colors, with the color contrast, and making it really kind of pop. I really do like what Chris did. And Juan, who was the artist, did a wonderful job. And Phoebe, she was the letterer. I was going to shout out to all the people involved because they all did a fantastic job of creating the look for the comic book.
Yeah, totally, man. Your color, the guy who does the colors, I love the neons, like the neon greens, the teals. It's something you don't necessarily expect to see when you're thinking of hell and fights in hell, but getting to see such vibrant colors like this, it contrasts really well with like the reds and the blacks. It's fun. Like it's a fun book to read. Like I mentioned before, I think on the surface, like it definitely appeals to that 90s crowd. Yeah. But when you start reading it and getting to like, why is Malek doing the things he's doing and the struggles that he's having in his own mind, it definitely appeals to a more, I guess, contemporary audience, or like a lot of stuff that I read nowadays. And so it's a good blend of old and new for me reading this book.
Yeah, that's definitely was one of my ideas going to. I mean, I will say in many ways when I go into the writing, I do kind of stick with, I go with concept, main character, and kind of let it drive forward. But yeah, there's a lot of that involved too, where I like to think that if you're looking for a comic book just to see some shit get messed up badly, this is a fun comic book for you. I mean, there's a lot of action, a lot of cool visuals, a lot of things get killed. But at the same time, if you want something a little bit deeper, it's there. Stop, pay attention to it. It's there, and it carries through the entire issue, and will carry forth in the next one. Like I said, the second issue is already underway for the art of it, and you'll see the same kind of visuals. Chris McCauley did a great job, Macaulay. But once again, the idea of it being cerebral on some level does carry through the entire series, and will actually become more and more prominent as the series goes on.
Yeah, totally, man. And so I came into this whenever you reached out to me on Twitter. And so the first book was already out. But as far as for you promoting this, I mean, are you doing a Kickstarter? Have you already done one? Like, or is it just plain already funded? Like, it's that damn good, Like...
Well, like I said, the first issue is already funded and out there. It's completed, 100% available right now on IndyPlanet. It's done. We didn't do a Kickstarter for it. We just decided we were going to do a Kickstarter. Actually, I'll backtrack just slightly. We were going to do a Kickstarter for the first issue, and then COVID happened, and me and the publisher Phoebe discussed it. And one of the things that me and her discussed was, and this is a situation where we have 40 million people without jobs, where people are not sure when what's going to happen, are a little panicked. And this is really a great time to do a Kickstarter. And we thought about it. And we said, probably not. It's probably not a time for Kickstarter when everyone is having probably some financial difficulties. So the publisher, she believed in the story and said, you know what, fuck it. Sorry, I don't know if you're not supposed to swear on your network. Sorry that I did just swear.
Oh, no, dude, you're all good.
All right, I appreciate that. Well, she basically said, fuck it. I'm just going to fund it. And she funded it. And now in the second issue, she liked the first one and said, fuck it, we're going to fund the second one. So basically, we're just doing it. And it's just being funded by 123 Go Publications, and we're pushing it through at the moment without a Kickstarter.
That's awesome, man. I mean, to have a publisher just believe in what you're doing, because I've talked to a lot of independent creators, and having to deal with a Kickstarter and the stress that comes with that, it affects your story. It gets in the way because that's just another thing you have to worry about. So that's badass that they've stepped in to just say, hey, we dig what you're doing. Don't worry about the money. We're going to help you get it done. Like that's awesome to have that.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great relief to me because obviously, I've done a Kickstarter before. There's a graphic novel I was working on called Sanctus. The first graphic novel was published by a small publisher. This was some years ago. And I decided to take it upon myself to do the second volume myself. And I tried to do a Kickstarter, and obviously it didn't happen. We didn't hit our number. And that's very stressful because it puts the comic book itself in question, puts it in limbo, which I don't know if it's a pun because we're talking about Malek. But anyways, it put it in limbo. And when I thought that Malek was going to be dependent upon a Kickstarter, I was really concerned by it. Because once again, it's in limbo. What happens if you don't hit your number? Concerns, everything else. It's like a promise that you're not keeping. But it was a great relief when the publisher just said, you know what, that 8-page story was fantastic. The issue you have is fantastic. And the 6 issues you haven't planned, I really like. I'm just doing it. And it was a great relief. And for every writer out there, we can all agree on one thing: it's really cool to see the script turn into pages, completed pages. And at the end of the day, that is so satisfactory. So much satisfaction from that it was great. It's great to see these pages still roll out.
Totally, man. It's great. It makes me happy to see this because, like you said, dude, it's hard. A lot of guys, a lot of writers, everyone tries to put out books, but they sometimes live or die by Kickstarters, by that kind of stuff, man. So congratulations to you to be able to get this. Like, it's awesome to see that.
And thank you so much. And I would say to any writer who is Kickstarter dependent, sometimes I do think Kickstarters are dependent on the quality of the work. I do think that's 100% true. But sometimes it's so unknown of why one Kickstarter works and one doesn't. Why does one have the connection and one doesn't? And I would like to think any writer who does have a failed Kickstarter, I just want as a reminder to them, it's not necessarily the project or you. Could be there's a million other factors involved sometimes when a Kickstarter fails. So hopefully they find another way of pushing it there and completing it. Just don't quit on your comic book because a Kickstarter failed. I know the money is obviously an issue, but I would say just don't quit. You don't know why necessarily it failed as a project, Kickstarter project. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely. And it's like you said, there's so much out there. Now, look, we're dealing with COVID and stuff like that. Like, just there's so many factors that go into it. Sometimes other things get pushed out that somehow just get this crazy following, like you talk about like Walking Dead, how that got blew up. But what happened to the comic book that came out the same week as Walking Dead? No one's so sometimes you're just unlucky.
And keep in mind too, sometimes some of those Kickstarters, I'm not trying to sound bitter or anything like that, but some of those Kickstarters that seem to blow up very quickly, keep in mind some of that, when you talk to some of the stuff that's going on, some people behind all that, some of that is pre-funded. Sometimes the people know people and they put in their own money to get the ball rolling, to make it look bigger. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Sometimes because it's bigger, it rolls faster. So keep in mind too, sometimes the person might have had a bankroll before they even started the project to keep it going too. So it's not necessarily orange, apples to apples when another person tries to Kickstarter and it failed, but they didn't have any real, let's say finances going into it too. So there's not involved. And like I said, I just want to stress any failed Kickstarter project writer out there, it may not be you. Don't give up on it. Find a way. Keep pushing on it. That'd just be my advice.
Awesome stuff, man. That's a good message to put out there for people. And I think that's a good way to kind of close out what we're talking about today. But Jeff, I want to thank you for coming on, man, talking about your book. Is there anything you want to plug before I let you go? Where else can you remind us where we can find the book and also the other podcasts that you work on?
Okay. First off, Malek Reigning Devil issue 1 is available on IndyPlanet. Just look up IndyPlanet, Malek Reigning Devil, digital 99 cents. The print's a little more money, and you got to pay for shipping, but it's still there. Keep your eyes out for a couple of other projects that I have coming out. One being the story called Mr. Claus that is going to be out by Christmas. It's a Christmas horror story, so that's going to be ready soon as well. I also have I'm a public relations manager for the Spoiler Country podcast. Once again, the entertainment podcast. Upcoming episodes will have Nana Visitor from Star Trek Voyager. We have Julian Richings from Supernatural. Episode coming out with Tony Isabella, Jerry Ordway, Daryl Banks, a bunch of others will be coming out soon as well. So look for those episodes on scpod.net. Also, if you look on Comixology, I have a mini series called Nightmare Patrol that I'm a co-writer of with my father, Bruce Haas. Check Comixology, buy the Nightmare Patrol. All 4 issues are available for purchase. That's my pitch.
Nice stuff, man. So before I go, I have to ask you, what's it like working with your dad?
I love my father. It's Father's Day. It's fantastic.
Happy Father's Day.
I will say family is hard, but it worked out well at the end.
Nice. Very political. No, very well spoken. I can only imagine, like, I dread if my dad ever like wanted to come on the show and be like, "Hey son, let's do a co-host thing." And I'd be like, "Oh God, no, please." Just Bry-Fy's over, guys. But no, go ahead.
I will say it was my father who got me into writing and comic books to begin with. But I will say writing with anyone else is hard, even if it's not your father. Writing with your father has some other, difficulties to it. But at the end of the day, I think we worked well together. We created a very good product that I think we're both very proud of. And the 5th issue that's not out yet is still is in script form, and one day we do hope to continue it. It's just that one, it will just be a little bit slower probably coming out.
Cool stuff, man. That was a great way to wrap up today, the Father's Day episode, we'll call it.
Indeed.
So, Jeff, once again, dude, I want to thank you for coming on, talking about Malek and his awesome adventures in hell, and just kind of giving us a preview of where things are going next, man. I appreciate it so much. Hopefully you had a good time, dude.
I definitely did. Thank you so much for having me on.